I've completely forgotten how to do this. So it's been almost a year since I've released a video, and I figure while I'm in the middle of moving, might as well do it now. So I have this cute little corner I threw together real quick. Nowadays, we're all very well aware that there's not a whole lot of reality in reality shows. Or is there? Better yet, what if the actual lives of the people in the reality shows was more intense than anything that producers could come up with? I decided to take a little deep dive into some of these reality shows, and the first one I wanted to talk about today is Wife Swap. And for those of you who might not know what I'm talking about, or just don't feel like Googling it, I'll give you a little rundown. Wife Swap was originally a British television show that was later adapted in 2004 in America. The show follows two families who are polar opposite in some way, whether that be how they raise their children, their religious beliefs, their political beliefs, or even something like being a successful career woman versus a stay-at-home mom. And for the next 2 weeks, the mother of either family swaps homes. The first week living under normal household rules, and then the second week, they get to implement their own rules. Sometimes it goes well, and the families do learn a thing or two and grow from this. But for the most part, they just fight.
Bacon is good for me.
I'll be going to the grocery store.
Never see this face again.
What are you gonna do? But today I'm going to talk about some of the families whose lives outside of this show were pretty extreme, controversial, and even tragic. Jeremy and Vicky Felix of Syracuse, New York, appeared on Season 2, Episode 2, swapping with Bill and Niecy Wiggins, a black couple based in North Carolina. Bill, a former Marine, raised his sons Breland and LB with more military-style values, making sure that they had their rooms spick and span, their schoolwork was done, and their chores were done before bed, following a strict curfew and bedtime. Which, I mean, for the most part, doesn't really sound that bad, especially if they're a young kid. 15 and 18. Oh, they're 15 and 18. Okay. Niecy also made sure to follow a strict schedule, which involved being up at 5 a.m. and having food and drinks ready for Bill, because apparently outside of just being like a strict parent, he just didn't really do anything. Now in the Felix's home, things were ran a little bit different. Jeremy and Vicky went by one rule. There are no rules. 9-year-old Erica and 5-year-old Dylan pretty much did whatever they felt like. They were able to cuss, they didn't have to pick up after themselves, and they could sleep pretty much anywhere they chose to, which included the floor. To be young again and not get sore because you slept wrong on your pillow. It really doesn't seem like this episode would be a memorable one, let alone cause any sort of backlash, right? That is until you learn that the Felix family is
openly racist.
Huh?
During the swap, you hear Vicky talk about how surprised she is that the Wiggins family is so clean considering their skin color.
This is obviously a black family, but they seem like they are clean.
Later, Niecy confronts Jeremy because he openly admits that he uses the N-word, and she tells him to
Stop it.
never use that word again.
A white person call a black person it's on.
Oh, yeah, but
Okay?
This hillbilly is stupid.
After the episode aired, the Felix family faced a lot of backlash, as you might expect, including threatening phone calls and being harassed by people driving past their home. Maybe don't be a racist. Well, we're done, boys. Where'd it go? This phone got distance. Way to go, Tim Apple. You really know how to make a bouncy phone. Call this thing Air Bud. The backlash was so severe that the producers of Wife Swap actually hired security for the family. And the children, Erica and Dylan, eventually moved out of the house and actually went to go live with family during all of this. I will say, though, I do feel terrible for the kids. They didn't ask for this. Jeremy's mother was quoted as saying, "It's a nightmare. There's been nothing positive about this. I've never known my daughter-in-law to be afraid of anything, but she won't go to the store. I won't even go to the store. Anything I've needed at the store the last couple of days, I've sent my husband because his face was not seen on TV." Moral of the story, don't be racist. The very first episode of Season 5, we get to meet storm scientist Richard Teeny weeny Heaney comedy, along with his wife, Mayumi, and their 3 kids who at the time of recording were 8-year-old Bradford, 7-year-old Rio, and 5-year-old Falcon. The Heaney family lived a very chaotic lifestyle. Every night they made sure to sleep with their regular clothes on in case they had to jump out of bed and go tornado chasing. They ended up swapping with child safety proofer Jay Martell and his wife Karen, along with their 2 children, 11-year-old Max and 10-year-old Dean. The swap went about as well as you would expect it to, at least in the Heaney household.
Oh, no, you didn't. And this will be your bitch meter. Trying to talk to her is like this, you know? So you talk and you talk and you talk and you talk and you talk.
Eventually, the Heaney family, along with another family, were voted back on the show for Wife Swap's 100th episode. But by this point, they'd moved on from storm chasing and were chasing UFOs. In that episode, they swapped with a psychic medium, Cherie Silver, and her husband Sam, along with their 2 sons, 13-year-old Andrew and 10-year-old Sam. Sure about that? I don't know. I'll fix it if it's wrong. Although both episodes were very entertaining, there wasn't a lot of controversy and backlash like the Wiggins and the Felix episode. But a few months after that episode aired in 2009, the Heaney family actually found themselves in some legal trouble, completely unrelated to Wife Swap. On October 15th of 2009, Richard reported his youngest son, Falcon, missing, claiming that he crawled into their homemade flying saucer and the helium-filled saucer somehow got untied and flew away. This quickly garnered national attention as the flying saucer was chased by National Guard helicopters and local Colorado police. Finally, after a 90-minute flight, the helium-filled saucer landed roughly 50 miles from the Heaney's home. A search for the boy quickly began, only to find that he was not in there, nor had he ever been in there. Apparently, Falcon did get tired and decided he wanted to take a nap, but instead of crawling into bed, he went and got in their attic. Needless to say, the shock from this story quickly wore off and suspicions began to arise, especially after the family had an interview with Larry King, and Falcon was quoted as saying,
You guys said that we did this for the show.
Ultimately, on November 13th of 2009, the Heaneys were charged and pled guilty to attempting to influence a public servant, where they were fined and spent some jail time.
However,
the couple maintained their innocence, stating that they only pled guilty because they were threatened with Mayumi's deportation. I guess somebody believed them, because in December of 2020, the Heaneys were pardoned by Governor Jared Polis these nuts? Unless, what if he's an alien? Season 4, episode 15, which aired in 2008, involved Kathy and Tim Stockdale, along with their 4 sons, Calvin, Charles, Jacob, and James. The Stockdales were an extremely conservative bluegrass-playing family who lived out on a farm. They ended up switching places with the Tonkovics, who were very lenient, allowing their children to do whatever they wanted. And it went pretty much like every Wife Swap episode does. There was some minor conflict, a bit of self-reflection, and then back to business as usual. The episode did, however, show just how isolated the Stockdale family was. The children were under constant parental supervision and were not allowed to watch television nor use the internet. Lori Tonkovic, who swapped places with Kathy Stockdale, actually claimed that when a television was brought into that home, one of the sons, Jacob, actually ran out, terrified that he would, quote, burn in hell. There was some minor backlash for all of this, but Kathy ended up using this as an opportunity to promote the family's bluegrass band, even sharing the episode on a blog she had at the time. For years after that, things seemed to be pretty normal. Friends and neighbors of the Stockdale even claimed that they were a loving and happy family. The eldest sons, Calvin and Charles, went off to college and eventually started families of their own. Meanwhile, Jacob and James stayed home, continuing the band and performing as a duo. That was until June 15th of 2017, when Stark County Police responded to a 911 call that was placed on the Stockdale farm. When police arrived to the property, they were immediately greeted with the sound of a gunshot, and what they found inside has stuck with them to this day. When entering the home, police found Kathy and James, unfortunately, deceased. They then found Jacob, alive, but with what appeared to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. It was later ruled that Jacob shot both his mother and his brother before attempting to take his his own life. The response to the news was extremely mixed. People who watched the episode of Wife Swap and even the Tonkovics said they weren't surprised based off the children's strict upbringing and severe isolation from the outside world. Meanwhile, people who knew the family personally were stunned. The surviving family, Tim Stockdale and the two eldest brothers Calvin and Charles, publicly forgave Jacob, expressing their love and support for Jacob while also mourning the loss of Kathy and James. For months after the murders and attempted suicide, Jacob was in critical condition, and after several years in psychiatric care, he was eventually deemed competent to stand trial. In 2021, Jacob pled guilty to 2 counts of murder as part of a plea deal and was sentenced to 30 years to life in prison. I can't imagine just how awful and traumatic that was. But hopefully the Stockdales have found some peace. But with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if there's any other reality shows you want me to talk about, or even some other Wife Swap episodes. I am addicted. Help me. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye. I dropped my phone again. Come on now. Tim Apple, help me.